when I was 15, I had met this 25-year-old that would come into the store and tell me he cared about me, he wanted to take care of me and take me away from all these problems, and told me he couldn't have children. 4 months later, I was pregnant. At 15, really had nowhere to live. So, this was a kind of the pattern of my life. And I gave my son up for adoption, which was super hard. And I pretty much got into drugs and alcohol. I had eating disorders. I've been everywhere from 70 pounds to 200 pounds on the scale. But I just kept moving. I was like partying. I really wasn't focusing on the depression or the anxiety or I was just drowning it with all kinds of different unhealthy ways. And when I was 18, I got a good job with the Steelworkers Union. So I was making money. I was able to get my own apartment. And, I was still partying, but I had my own apartment. I was responsible. And I bought a Mustang, and I was just rolling through life. And when I met my children's father, and I was engaged to him, I was about 23 years old, and I was safe, and I wasn't partying anymore. And I was, planning on getting married and having children and building a family. And that's when I had my breakdown. So you'd think oh, I'm finally safe. And I think that's when my mind and my body said, okay, now you got to face what's going on, because you weren't facing it before. You were too young at one point. So that was probably the most terrifying time of my life, even though I've been through like sleeping in cars and living outside. Like that breakdown, it was sink or swim for me. It was live or die for me, because I was terrified. My mind was just complete torment, fear, anxiety. I couldn't leave the house. I just stopped going to work. I didn't even go to work. I just stayed in bed. Thank God I was engaged to a great guy and he's, even though we're not married, he's still one of my best friends. Thank God, because he pulled me through it. And I didn't want to go to traditional therapy because I had already seen some of my friends who had been through therapy for years. And it always seemed like they're in it for years and they're taking meds. And to me, it seemed, not that it's wrong for everybody. I don't want to give that impression that I'm saying that. But for me, it was not the right choice. And I started getting my hands on every self-help book as far as mindset, because I felt like it was my mind that was going wrong. Like it was, and I'm like, how do I fix my mind? And I learned how to think. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's simple, but it's not easy. It took a lot of time and it took a lot of work. And that's why I wrote my book. Obviously, the book is my whole story, not this 10-minute spiel of it. But my publisher, when I wrote it, and for years, people were telling me, write a book, write a book, write a book. Yeah. And I was, I mean, I didn't even write a book until I became a grandma, so it was, I just felt like, okay, the time's right now. And I wrote the book and my publisher was like, man, it's heavy. It's hard. It's heavy. Yeah. So at the end of every chapter, give them a reprieve. So what I did is at the end of each chapter, I put in tips and how I got over this particular thing or how I went through that and things that helped me get through things. So, and people do ask, was it, it must have been therapeutic writing it. No. The reason it wasn't is because I don't live there anymore. So for me to go back and live it and to write it, to present it to the world, I had to go back and relive it. And that's what I feel like therapy would have done. Keep you focusing on the problem, talk about the why, talk about the hows, and then when, of course, you're depressed because you keep focusing on the problem, then they give you meds to keep talking about it. And then the labels make you feel doomed. You have PTSD or you were manic depressant or you get these labels and you're taking these meds, and it's almost like this hamster wheel, you know. So I think my grandkids kept me here. I know they kept me here when I had to go back there. So they're just, great and fun and happy. And
When you say they kept you, your grandkids kept you here instead of
in the
kept you over there
present,
in the present moment.
kept me
Yeah.
present when I had to go back to a place that was pretty ugly.
Yeah.
One of the most powerful things I've heard and helped me way back when was the past doesn't exist. And you'd be like, what do you mean it doesn't exist? It does not even exist. It's not real. It doesn't exist. The only way it exists is if you give it thought. Right?
Yep.
So now you can pick, and when you have that power, when you learn that power, now you can pick and choose what I want to go revisit and remember, because it doesn't exist unless you give it thought. Why would I give this abuse and trauma that I experienced? Why do I want to give that power? Why do I want to give that thought and keep it alive? It's not even in my life anymore.